The night was darker than usual, the sky heavy with clouds that seemed ready to crush the city beneath their weight. Rain lashed against rooftops, flooding narrow streets and beating down with a fury that made even the strongest walls shudder. Clara held her daughter, Sofia, close against her chest, her thin shawl already soaked through. The roof of their tiny apartment had given way, dripping water into the one-room space where they had lived for the past year. The electricity had gone out hours ago, and the little candles Clara had managed to buy were drowning in their own melted wax. Sofia's small voice trembled against her ear. "Mama, I'm scared." Clara pressed a kiss to her daughter's wet hair, forcing her voice to sound calm though her heart was racing. "It's all right, my love. As long as I'm here, nothing will hurt you." Her words were brave, but the truth weighed heavily on her. She had nowhere to go. No family left to run to. No neighbors willing to open their doors in the middle of such chaos. For years, she had fought with everything she had to keep Sofia safe, working 2 jobs, skipping meals, and giving up her dreams so her daughter would never feel the emptiness she herself had known growing up. Yet tonight, under the fury of the storm, even her strength felt too small. Her phone, nearly dead, glowed faintly in her hand. Only one name came to her mind, though it was ridiculous to even think it: Adrián Velasco. Her employer, a man as distant and unreachable as the stars. He was wealthy beyond imagination, owner of skyscrapers and empires, yet colder than the marble floors he walked upon. To him, Clara was nothing more than an assistant, a shadow who managed his schedule, his documents, his endless meetings. She had never expected kindness from him, never dared to ask. But tonight wasn't about pride. Tonight was about survival. With trembling fingers, she called him. Each ring felt like a century, her heart in her throat. She almost hung up, ashamed of her desperation, when his voice finally answered, deep, stern, edged with annoyance. "Clara, do you have any idea what time?" Her words spilled out, breaking through his irritation. "Mr. Velasco, I'm sorry, I wouldn't call if it wasn't. Please, my home, it's flooding." "Sofia," she called, and her voice cracked, and she hated herself for sounding weak. There was silence on the other end. She imagined his face, hard and unyielding, wondering why a billionaire would care about the struggles of a single mother. But then, unexpectedly, his tone shifted. "Where are you?" Clara's breath hitched. "Our building on Calle Roja. The water, it's already up to the stairs." "Stay where you are," Adrián said fiercely. "Don't go outside. I'm coming." Before she could protest, the line went dead. She stood frozen in disbelief. Had he really said he was coming? Adrián Velasco, the man who never lifted a finger for anyone but himself. Her arms tightened around Sofia, who looked up at her with wide eyes. Clara forced a smile, whispering, "Hold on, baby. Help is coming." Minutes crawled by, the storm howling louder, water seeping across the floor. Clara lifted Sofia onto the only dry chair left, standing beside her as thunder cracked like a whip. And then, through the roar of the rain, headlights cut through the darkness outside. A black car stopped in front of the building, wipers fighting the flood of water. The driver's door flung open, and there he was, tall, commanding, drenched within seconds. Adrián Velasco, the man she had only ever seen in perfect suites and spotless offices, was now braving the storm for her. "Clara!" he shouted, his voice carrying through the rain. Tears blurred her eyes as she grabbed Sofia and hurried down the steps, her shoes sinking into the water. Adrián reached them halfway, his strong arms pulling Sofia against his chest while guiding Clara with the other hand. For a moment, the storm disappeared, and all she felt was the strength in his grip and the strange safety of not being alone. Inside the car, the war was overwhelming. Sofia clung to Adrián without hesitation, her small hands gripping his soaked jacket. Clara sat trembling, water dripping from her hair, her heart thundering as hard as the rain outside. She whispered, almost to herself, "I didn't know who else to call." Adrián glanced at her, his jaw set, but his eyes softer than she had ever seen. You called the right person. As the car pulled away from the drowning streets, Clara held Sofia close again, her gaze drifting to the man beside her. For the first time since she had known him, she wondered if there was more to Adrián Velasco than the cold mask he always wore. And for the first time in a long time, a fragile spark of hope flickered in her chest. The car glided through the storm until towering iron gates opened to reveal a mansion lit like a fortress against the darkness. Clara had only ever seen it from the outside on rare work visits, impossibly large, gleaming with wealth she couldn't even imagine touching. But tonight, as Adrián carried Sofia in his arms and guided Clara inside, it felt less like a palace and more like another world. War MTH hit her immediately. Golden light spilled from chandeliers, reflecting on polished marble floors. The storm outside still howled, but within these walls, it was silent, secure. Sofia stared in Adrián's arms, her sleepy eyes widening in wonder. "Mama, it's like a castle," she whispered. Clara managed a tired smile, brushing wet strands from her daughter's face. "Yes, mi amor, a castle for one night." Adrián set Sofia gently onto a thick sofa, then turned to Clara. For once, he wasn't barking orders or lost in his phone. He looked at her directly, and in his eyes she caught something she never expected, concern. "You're both so good. There are guest rooms upstairs. I'll have them prepared." Clara shook her head quickly, embarrassment flooding her. "Please, Mr. Velasco, we don't want to trouble you. If you just let us stay in the corner until the storm." He interrupted, his voice firm but not unkind. "Clara, you're not staying in a corner. You and your daughter will be comfortable here." She lowered her gaze, unused to such gentleness from him, unsure whether to believe it. Moments later, maids hurried in with towels, blankets, and a tray of hot cocoa. Sofia's face lit up when she saw the steaming mugs, her small hands wrapping around one as if it were the greatest treasure in the world. Adrián watched quietly, something soft flickering across his face at the sight of her simple joy. Clara sat beside her daughter, drying her hair with the towel while ignoring her own shivering body. Adrián noticed, and for the first time, he saw her not as his efficient assistant but as a mother, one who always put herself second. "You're freezing," he said, frowning. "Why don't you take a shower? I'll stay with her." Clara blinked, startled. Leave Sofia with him. The thought had never crossed her mind. She hesitated, then looked at Sofia, who was already chattering happily about how the cocoa tasted like Christmas. Her heart softened. Maybe, just this once. When she returned later, her worn clothes replaced with one of the mansion's spare robes, she froze in the doorway. Adrián was seated at the grand piano in the lounge, Sofia perched beside him, tiny fingers pressing random keys while giggling. To her surprise, Adrián wasn't impatient. He wasn't scolding her for touching the priceless instrument. Instead, he was showing her which keys made the sweetest sounds. And then it happened. Sofia began humming the lullaby. Clara's breath caught in her throat. She hadn't realized her daughter had remembered it so well, the soft, haunting melody she sang to her every night to help her sleep. But as Sofia's voice filled the grand room, Adrián's hands stayed on the keys. His eyes widened, his chest rising sharply. "That song," he whispered, almost to himself. His face, usually unreadable, looked suddenly vulnerable. Clara stepped forward cautiously. "It's just a lullaby. My mother used to sing it to me. Now I sing it to her." Adrián turned toward her, his eyes clouded with something she didn't understand. "My mother, she used to sing the same song." Silence wrapped around them, broken only by the storm tapping against the windows. Clara felt her heart tighten. For years, she had thought Adrián untouchable, armored in wealth and power. Yet here he was, pierced by a melody a little girl carried in her heart. Sofia, unaware of the weight of the moment, looked up at him innocently. "Do you miss your mama too?" Clara's breath hitched. She wanted to stop her daughter, to apologize for her boldness. But Adrián didn't look offended. Instead, his shoulders lowered, the mask slipping further. "Every day, admitted softly. And Clara realized something she never imagined, that beneath the billionaire's coldness was a man who, just like her, carried scars no money could heal. That night, after Sofia finally drifted to sleep in the softest bed she had ever touched, Clara sat alone by the window, staring at the storm. Adrian's words echoed in her mind. For so long, she had thought her struggles were invisible to him, that her sacrifices for Sofia were unnoticed by the world. But tonight, in this mansion that seemed so far from her reality, she saw something she hadn't expected. Maybe their worlds weren't so different after all. Morning light seeped through tall windows, turning the storm's aftermath into a hazy calm. Clara awoke to the unfamiliar softness of silk sheets. For a moment she panicked, forgetting where she was, until she saw Sofia curled beside her, smiling in her sleep. Relief washed over her. The storm had taken everything. They were safe. She rose quietly, slipping into her worn shoes she had left near the bed. Even in this palace, she felt the weight of her reality pressing against her. She wasn't a guest here, she was a woman who had begged for shelter, a mother who had nothing else to offer. Downstairs, she found Adrian already at the breakfast table. He was dressed impeccably, as if the storm hadn't touched him at all. Yet when he looked up from his coffee, his eyes softened. "There's food for you and Sofia. Sit, eat." Clara hesitated. The spread before her was more than she and her daughter could dream of in a week: eggs, fresh fruit, warm bread, and juices of every kind. She swallowed hard, remembering the night before, when she had given Sofia the last piece of stale bread in their cupboard while pretending she wasn't hungry. Sofia came bounding down the stairs, her little eyes shining at the sight of the table. "Mama, look." She clapped her hands in excitement. Clara smiled faintly but held her daughter back for a moment, whispering, "Eat slowly, mi amor. Don't show how hungry you are." She didn't want Adrian to see how desperate they really were, how empty their stomachs had been. But Adrian had already noticed. He watched as Sofia devoured her food, her joy uncontainable, while Clara only nibbled at a piece of toast. "You're not eating," he said quietly. Clara looked down, embarrassed. "I'm fine. I ate last night." It was a lie, one she had told 100 times before to Sofia, to friends, to herself. Adrian studied her, the lie obvious. For the first time, he felt the sting of guilt. How many times had he seen her come to work, pale and tired, and never wondered why. Later that day, as Clara helped one of the housekeepers tidy Sofia's temporary room, Adrian happened to pass by. He paused in the doorway, unseen, watching as Clara mended Sofia's torn dress by hand. The stitches were neat, practiced, evidence of how many times she had repeated the same task. Sofia danced around happily, showing her mother a drawing she had made with crayons she found in the mansion's playroom. "It's us, Mama," Sofia explained proudly, pointing to the stick figures on the paper. "You, me, and him." She pointed at the taller figure with black scribbles for her. Clara's heart tightened. She brushed Sofia's cheek tenderly. "He's just your mama's boss, sweetheart. Don't get used to this place. We'll go back home soon." "But Mama," Sofia said, her little voice filled with conviction, "I wish we could stay." "It makes you smile." Clara forced a laugh, but her eyes stung. The truth was, she didn't remember the last time she had smiled without forcing it. Life had been a constant battle: rent, bills, long hours at work, whispers from neighbors about her being a single mother. She carried it all silently so Sofia wouldn't have to. Adrian stepped away quietly, shaken by what he'd heard. He returned to his office but couldn't focus. Images of Clara struggling played in his mind, her thin frame from skipped meals, her hands rough from work, her exhaustion masked by polite smiles. He thought of Sofia's words, so simple yet piercing, "It makes you smile." That evening, as Clara tucked Sofia into bed, Adrian lingered outside the room. He overheard Clara whispering softly, singing the lullaby. Her voice was tired, yet warm, wrapping around her daughter like a shield. Sofia yawned. "Mama, Why do you always sing when you're sad? Clara paused, brushing Sophia's hair back. Because songs remind us that even when life is hard, there's still beauty. And as long as I have you, I can bear anything. Adrian closed his eyes, his chest tightening. He had spent his life believing money could shield him from pain, yet here was a woman who had nothing, but gave everything. For the first time in years, Adrian wondered if he had been living all wrong. The storm had passed, but the mansion remained wrapped in a quiet tension. Days slipped by slowly, each one drawing Clara and Sofia deeper into Adrian's world. He didn't ask them to leave. Clara offered, more than once, ashamed of overstaying their welcome, but Adrian always dismissed her gently. The city's still repairing. You're safer here. One evening, after Sofia had fallen asleep, Clara wandered into the lounge, drawn by the soft sound of the grand piano. Adrian was there, seated alone, his back straight, his fingers gliding over the keys with surprising grace. The melody was haunting, full of sorrow and longing. It wasn't polished like a professional's, but raw, trembling with memory. Clara stood quietly, her heart aching at the sight. This wasn't the cold man she had known at the office. This was someone else entirely, lonely, vulnerable, human. When the last note faded, Adrian didn't turn. His voice, low and steady, carried into the silence. My mother used to play this piano. She was the only one who ever made this place feel alive. Clara hesitated, then stepped closer. She must have loved you very much. He gave a small, bitter laugh. She did, but she was sick. She left too soon, and after that, this house became just walls. Empty, quiet. I buried myself in work because it was easier than remembering. Clara's chest tightened. She knew that emptiness. Different circumstances, but the same ache of losing love, of being left to carry burdens alone. She wanted to say something, to bridge the distance between them, but before she could, a soft voice interrupted. Mama. They turned to see Sofia rubbing her eyes, clutching the small blanket Adrian's staff had given her. She padded over to the piano and climbed onto the bench beside Adrian, her little fingers pressing random keys. Then, without warning, she began humming again, the lullaby. Clara's breath caught. Adrian froze. His hands, resting on the piano, trembled. His eyes glistened with a sheen Clara had never seen before. That song, he whispered again, his voice breaking. Sofia looked up at him innocently. Mama sings it to me every night. She says it makes the world less scary. Adrian swallowed hard, his throat tight. My mother, she used to sing me the same melody when the storms frightened me. The room fell silent, except for Sofia's humming. Clara lowered herself onto the bench beside them, her heart pounding. It was as though destiny had stitched their lives together with a single reed of music, something small, yet powerful enough to pierce through years of loneliness. Sofia leaned against Adrian's arm, yawning. Do you miss her a lot? He nodded slowly, voice hoarse. Every day. Clara watched him carefully. For once, there was no mask of arrogance, no shield of wealth. Just a man, broken in ways she understood too well. She reached out, almost without thinking, placing her hand gently over his. Her touch was light, hesitant, but steady. You don't have to carry it alone, she whispered. His eyes lifted to hers, something unreadable flickering in them. Pain, yes, but also relief, as if someone had finally seen him, not the billionaire, not the empire, but the son who had lost his mother too soon. In that fragile moment, Clara realized their struggles were different, but their hearts had been shaped by the same storms. And maybe, just maybe, they had been led here, to this house, this piano, this melody, for a reason neither could deny. Days turned into weeks. What had begun as a night of refuge stretched into a rhythm of shared meals, laughter, and quiet moments that neither Clara nor Adrian had expected. For Sofia, the mansion had become a wonderland. She skipped through the halls as if they were fields, her drawings now taped on the walls of her room. But what surprised Clara most was how naturally Sofia had grown attached to Adrian. It wasn't the distant, intimidating voice in her daughter's eyes. To her, he was someone who listened to her stories, tasted her clumsy attempts at baking cookies with the maids, and even allowed her to braid his hair his patience shocking everyone in the household. Clara watched it all with a heart that felt both heavy and light. She had spent years shielding Sofia from disappointment, from the absence of a father, from the cruelty of a world that looked down on single mothers. And now, here was Adrian, someone she had never imagined in such a role, filling empty spaces with warm mth she hadn't dared to hope for. One evening, Clara found herself in the garden, the storm's wreckage long cleared away. The sky was painted in twilight, soft shades of gold and violet. Adrian joined her, his hands in his pockets, silent at first. "You've given her something he couldn't," Clara said quietly, her gaze fixed on Sofia chasing butterflies in the grass. "A place to feel safe. A home." Adrian shook his head slowly. "It's the other way around. She's given me something I thought I'd lost forever." Clara turned to him, puzzled. "A family," he admitted, his voice low. "For years, I convinced myself I didn't need one. That money, success, control, that was enough. But she," he nodded toward Sofia, who was now laughing freely, "she reminds me of what it feels like to be alive. To be seen, not as a man with wealth, but simply as someone who can matter to another person." Clara's eyes burned with tears. She had never expected to hear such words from him. Slowly, she whispered, "And me. What do he remind you of?" He met her gaze, and the intensity in his eyes made her breath falter. "You remind me that love isn't weakness. That sacrifice is the purest strength. Watching you with her, I see what it means to give everything without asking for anything in return. It humbles me." Silence lingered between them, charged, fragile, full of unspoken truths. That night, as Sofia climbed into her bed, she looked at Adrian with sleepy eyes and whispered, "Good night, Papa." Clara froze. Her heart leapt and ached all at once. She opened her mouth to correct Sofia, to protect Adrian from a title that might burden him. But Adrian only smiled, brushing Sofia's hair back with surprising tenderness. "Good night, Sofia." Clara's throat tightened. In that moment, she saw her daughter's deepest wish reflected in Adrian's quiet acceptance. Weeks later, when the city had finally recovered, Clara packed their few belongings. It was time, she told herself, to return to their life, their struggles. This mansion, this closeness, it couldn't last. She couldn't risk Sofia's heart on something uncertain. But when Adrian found her in the foyer, suitcase in hand, his expression darkened. "You're leaving." Clara nodded, forcing a smile. "You've done more than enough for us. I don't want to take advantage of your kindness." He stepped closer, his voice firm. "Do you really think that's all this is? Kindness?" She looked away, her chest tight. "You're my employer. Our worlds don't match. I don't want Sofia to hope for something that isn't real." Adrian reached out, gently lifting her chin until her eyes met his. His voice broke through every wall she had built. "It is real, Clara. I may have built an empire, but without you and Sofia, it's nothing but empty walls. You brought life back into this house. You brought me back to myself. Don't take that away." Her tears spilled freely now. "Adrian," he cupped her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. "Stay, not as my assistant, not as a guest, but as my family." Sofia appeared at that moment, rubbing her sleepy eyes, holding her blanket. "Mama, are we going home?" Clara turned to her daughter, torn. But before she could answer, Adrian bent down to meet Sofia's gaze. His voice was gentle, steady. "You are home, Sofia. If you want it to be." The little girl's face lit up, and she ran into his arms without hesitation. Clara's heart swelled at the sight, a mix of fear and joy overwhelming her. But when Adrian held Sofia and looked at Clara over her daughter's shoulder, she saw the truth written plainly in his eyes. This wasn't pity or obligation. It was love, and for the first time, Clara allowed herself to believe it. That night, as they stood together by the piano, Adrian's fingers played the lullaby softly, and Clara's voice joined in, wrapping around Sofia as she drifted to sleep. The melody no longer belonged to the past, no longer a reminder of loss. It was their song now, a reed stitching them together, mother, daughter, and the man who had once been a stranger but was now the missing piece of their family. The storm had taken away their home. But in its aftermath, it had given them something greater. A new beginning, a love that felt destined. A family, born not from blood, but from the courage to open broken hearts and let them heal together.